I have moved detained individuals across the Selthari Reach for 19 rotations. I have transported Vreth war priests, still humming their death chants through reinforced bulkheads. I have moved Onaki swarm mothers, who dissolved their restraint bolts with digestive acid before we cleared the first waypoint. I once moved a Peleki telepath who convinced 2 of my guards to unlock his containment cell before we identified the neural interference and sedated him. I know what dangerous looks like. I know the sounds it makes, the postures it holds, the biochemical signatures it leaves on a scanner. The human matched none of them. Her name was Elena Torres. Maintenance technician, Joint Species Deep Well Mining Station, Mirathi Shelf. My orders were straightforward. Separate her from the human crew pending the inquiry. Transport her to the administrative holding complex on Kethru Station. Estimated transit time, 40 cycles. She boarded without resistance. She looked at the containment suite, which was, admittedly, designed for occupants considerably more volatile than a maintenance technician, and said, "This is fine." She sat on the cot, folded her hands in her lap, and asked when she would be returned to her crew. 40 cycles, I told her. Possibly fewer if the inquiry resolved quickly. She nodded once. "That's a long time," she said. Then she went quiet. I logged the first cycle as unremarkable. Cooperative detainee. Standard nutrition intake. No aggression, no distress indicators, no communication attempts, beyond polite acknowledgement when guards brought meals. Yesarn was my ship's medical technician, Adrel Kothi, trained in xenobiology at the Convocatory on Sethris. She was not easily unsettled. She came to my station with a data tablet and an expression I had not seen from her in 4 rotations of shared service. I did not understand why that warranted concern. She appears calm. She's accepted the situation. The stress indicators, what human literature calls cortisol, were declining along a smooth, deliberate curve. But another compound was rising on a parallel track. The Convocatory had catalogued it years earlier from archived human medical data. It had been flagged as notable, but never fully characterized. It's a bonding agent, Yesarn said. Neurochemical, present in all humans at baseline levels. Hers has been climbing since she came aboard. She pulled up a dimensional rendering of Torres's neural architecture, a dense, luminous map of pathways and junctions. The bonding compound was threading through the structure like roots through soil, not metaphorically. It was laying down additional myelin sheathing along circuits associated with spatial memory, social attachment, and what human researchers refer to as homing behavior. Her brain is restructuring, Yesarn said. Slowly, methodically, it is redirecting processing capacity away from stress response, away from fear, away from short-term situational analysis, and funneling everything into a single objective. I looked at the pathways on the scan. They were bright, hard-edged, dense. They looked like something that had been built to last. Can we suppress it? Targeted chemical intervention would require a full endocrine shutdown, which would kill her. Yesarn paused. It is not a malfunction, Overseer. It is architecture. Their biology does this by design. She highlighted a cross-reference note in the convocatory file. In their own medical literature, the compound cluster falls under the heading of attachment, pair bonding, group bonding. Another pause. They have a common word for what it does. They call it love. By cycle 5, Torres had settled into a daily routine so precise it read as meditative. She ate at the same interval each cycle. She slept at the same interval. She performed light calisthenics, nothing aggressive, nothing that triggered the behavioral flags, at the same interval. She was unfailingly pleasant to every guard who entered the suite. She asked their names. She remembered them the next visit. I noted this in the transport log as cooperative behavioral pattern. Yesarn read the entry, deleted my phrasing, and replaced it with her own annotation. Detainee is not cooperating. Detainee is conserving. She told me to review the eye tracking data. We pulled the surveillance footage from the previous 2 cycles. Torres on her cot, hands folded, engaging the meal duty guard in casual conversation about his family. Calm, attentive, warm, even, but her eyes moved in micro-patterns that the tracking software flagged as anomalous. Quick peripheral sweeps that mapped guard rotation timing through reflections in the containment glass, measured the interval between door seal cycles, and cataloged which wall panel seams carried the slightest tolerance gaps. Her conscious attention was on the guard's answer about his daughter's schooling. Her peripheral processing was running a completely separate operation. She is mapping the ship, Yesarn said. She may not be fully aware she is doing it. The bonding compound has recruited her spatial processing centers. Her brain is running a constant, low-priority return calculation beneath conscious awareness. She's planning to escape. Planning implies a decision. This is autonomic. Her nervous system has classified the current situation as separated from the bonded group and activated a recovery protocol that predates her species' written language. She is not choosing to find a way back to her people. She is unable to stop finding a way back. I changed the guard rotation to irregular intervals. I removed every detachable object from the containment suite: meal implements, exercise mat, hygiene supplies, the data tablet I had allowed as a courtesy. Torres surveyed the bare room when she returned from the hygiene station. "You read the scans," she said, not accusatory, almost sympathetic. I said nothing. "It's all right," she said. She sat down on the cot and folded her hands. "I would do the same thing." On cycle 11, at 0340 ship time, she was standing in the corridor outside her containment suite. No alarms had triggered. The door lock, a Vreth-rated magnetic seal certified for high-threat containment, had been disengaged using a thin metal strip extracted from the cot frame's interior structural support. She had worked it free over the preceding 6 cycles by applying targeted pressure to the weld seam during her calisthenics sets, displacing it a few microns per session, timed to the peak volume of the ventilation system's compression cycle so the faint sound was masked. She was not running. She was not armed. She was standing barefoot in the corridor, facing the aft section of the ship where the communications array was housed. Not the escape pods, not the weapon locker. The communications array. 2 guards reached her within seconds. She did not resist. She looked at them with an expression I have replayed many times since. It was not desperation. It was not anger or defiance. It was patience. A deep, structural patience that had nothing to do with willpower and everything to do with certainty. I returned her to the suite. I replaced the cot with a solid frame unit welded to the deck. Denser, more heavily reinforced. "It is not weakening," she said. "Separation is the stimulus. Each cycle away from the bonded group increases compound production. You are not containing her, Overseer. You are accelerating her. What happens when the compound reaches saturation? Unknown. No research team has been able to maintain isolation long enough to observe it. Every previous study ended the same way. How? The humans went home. I filed my report to Kethru Station the following morning. I recommended that the human detainee be returned to her crew immediately, and that the inquiry be conducted on site with her group intact. The administrative office requested my justification. They approved the transfer within the hour. When I told Torres, she closed her eyes. Just for a moment. When she opened them, the patience was gone, replaced by something quieter, something I did not have a Selthari word for. She said, "Thank you." I did not tell her it was not mercy. I did not explain that the data had simply made the situation legible, that keeping her was never a viable long-term option, not because she would become violent, but because the compound would find a way. It always found a way. That was its entire evolutionary function. I watched the shuttle dock at the Mirathi Shelf Station. 13 humans were standing at the port. Every one of them reached for her before the airlock had finished cycling. Yesarn observed the reunion on the exterior feed without comment. After a long silence, she opened the neural scan one final time and entered a single classification line into the convocatory research archive. Not a vulnerability, not a tactical behavior, not an emotion, a permanent structural integration with no known counteragent. Below it she added a field recommendation that I have since seen adopted into 3 separate fleet transport directives. Do not separate the humans. Not because they will become aggressive, because the bond does not recognize your authority, your containment protocols, your sedatives, or your walls. It recognizes only the group, and it does not stop until the distance is 0. I have moved many dangerous beings across the reach. Elena Torres is the only one I returned ahead of schedule. She is also the only one I was afraid of. Not for what she could do, but for what she could not stop doing.